The next morning came quickly aboard Kepler Station. Jake had slept poorly in the strange alien quarters, where the bed was too soft and the air smelled like flowers he had never encountered. But today was important. The cultural exchange would be humanity's first real chance to make a good impression. The demonstration room was large and bright, with cooking equipment that the station's computers had built based on human specifications. Lisa Walker stood at the center, checking over the ingredients they had brought from Earth. Pete Anderson was beside her, organizing pots and pans. "Remember," Jake said quietly to his crew, "this is about showing them who we are. Keep it simple, keep it friendly." Dr. Foster was setting up a small display of human art and music, while the others arranged chairs around the cooking area. The aliens would arrive soon, and Jake wanted everything to be perfect. "Captain," said Tom Brady, "I'm getting word that more aliens are coming than we expected. Looks like news of the demonstration spread around the station." "How many more?" "Maybe 20 or 30 instead of the 3 we met yesterday." Jake felt his stomach tighten. More observers meant more pressure, but also more opportunity to impress the council. "That's fine. We can handle it." The doors opened and aliens began filing in. Jake recognized Commander Zekthor and his group from yesterday, but there were many others. Some looked like giant crabs walking on their back legs. Others were floating in what appeared to be water-filled suits. A few looked almost like walking trees, and several were small and furry with large ears. "Impressive turnout," said Veltari as she approached Jake. "Word has spread that the Deathworld species is sharing their food culture. Many are curious." "Deathworld species?" asked Dr. Foster. "It is what you are called," said Commander Zekthor. "Species from dangerous worlds. There have been very few in galactic history." "What happened to the others?" Jake asked. Zekthor's 4 arms shifted uncomfortably. "That is a discussion for another time. Today is about your people." Lisa stepped forward with a smile. "Welcome, everyone. I'm Lisa Walker, and I'll be preparing a traditional human breakfast this morning. On Earth, breakfast is the first meal of the day, eaten to give us energy for work." The aliens gathered around the cooking area. Some had translation devices, others seemed to understand directly. Jake noticed they were all keeping a careful distance from the cooking station. "What kind of energy do humans require?" asked one of the crab-like beings through its translator. "Protein, carbohydrates, vitamins," Lisa explained as she began laying out ingredients. "Humans are omnivores, which means we eat both plants and other things." She paused, noticing that several aliens had stepped back when she said other things. Maybe she should have been more specific. "Let me show you," Lisa continued, picking up an egg. "This is a chicken egg, very common breakfast food on Earth." The reaction was immediate. Several small, furry aliens made high-pitched sounds. The crystal beings began flashing different colors. Commander Zekthor's large eyes grew even larger. "You consume offspring?" asked Kulzen, the crystal alien, its voice like breaking glass. Lisa looked confused. "Well, no, these aren't fertilized. They're just eggs. The chickens lay them whether there's going to be a baby chicken or not." This didn't seem to help. If anything, the aliens looked more disturbed. "You force creatures to produce offspring for your consumption?" asked one of the tree-like beings. "It's not forcing." Pete Anderson jumped in, trying to help. "Chickens lay eggs naturally, we just collect them. The chickens are well cared for." Jake saw that this explanation was making things worse, not better. The aliens were whispering among themselves in various languages, and their body language suggested distress. Lisa, unaware of the growing concern, cracked the egg into a hot pan. The sizzling sound made several aliens jump backward. She reached for another ingredient. "And this is bacon," she said cheerfully, holding up strips of cured meat. "It comes from pigs, very popular breakfast meat on Earth." The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien in the room had gone completely still. The floating aquatic beings had stopped moving in their water suits. Even the soft humming that some of the creatures had been making stopped. Commander Zekthor slowly reached for what looked like a weapon on his belt. "You consume the flesh of other creatures?" "Well, yes," Lisa said, now realizing something was very wrong but not understanding what. "Humans are omnivores. We eat meat and vegetables both." Dr. Foster stepped forward quickly. "Perhaps we should explain human biology and evolution." "No explanation needed," said Zekthor, his voice cold. "We understand perfectly." Pete Anderson, still trying to help, added bacon to another pan. The smell of cooking meat filled the room, and the reaction was explosive. Several small aliens ran for the exits. The crystal beings began flashing red lights. The tree-like creatures made sounds like wind through leaves, but angry wind. "Wait," Jake said, moving between Lisa and the aliens. "There's obviously been a misunderstanding. Please let us explain." But the damage was spreading. One of the aquatic beings had gone limp in its water suit, and others were making what could only be distress calls. When Lisa added milk to the eggs, thinking it might help to show a gentler ingredient, one of the crab-like aliens actually fainted. "You drink the life essence of maternal creatures?" shouted another alien. "What manner of monsters are you?" "Monsters?" Jake was getting angry now. "We're not monsters. This is just food. Every species has to eat." "Not like this," said Veltari, her musical voice now sharp. "No civilized species consumes other living beings or their offspring or their life essences." Commander Zekthor stepped forward, his four hands now clearly on weapons. "The demonstration is over. We have seen enough." "But we haven't finished," Lisa protested, still holding the pan of scrambled eggs. "I was going to make toast and coffee, too." "Toast?" asked Kulzen weakly. "Bread, made from wheat." "It's a plant," Lisa said hopefully. "And coffee? Also from a plant. Coffee beans." Some of the aliens looked slightly relieved, but Commander Zekthor was not satisfied. "The damage is done. We have witnessed Deathworld savagery firsthand." "This isn't savagery," Dr. Foster said firmly. "This is how humans have survived and thrived for thousands of years. We're not monsters, we're just different." "Different," repeated Zekthor. "Yes, you are certainly that." The aliens began filing out of the room, many of them casting fearful or disgusted looks at the humans. Within minutes, only Commander Zekthor, Veltari, and Kulzen remained. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now," said Zekthor, "the Council will hear about this demonstration. They will learn that humans are predators who consume the flesh and offspring of other creatures as casually as we consume fruit." "But that's not fair," protested Lisa. "You didn't let me explain about farming or nutrition or how we care for our animals." "Care for them?" Veltari's voice was bitter. "You raise creatures for the purpose of killing and eating them. How is that care?" Jake saw his mission falling apart before his eyes. "Please, give us another chance. Let us explain properly." Commander Zekthor was already heading for the door. "The Council will meet tonight to discuss what we have witnessed. I suggest you prepare for difficult questions. As the three aliens left, Jake's crew stood in stunned silence around the abandoned breakfast. The eggs were getting cold, and the bacon was starting to burn. "What just happened?" Lisa asked quietly. "I think," said Dr. Foster slowly, "we just discovered that the rest of the galaxy is vegetarian." The hours after the breakfast disaster felt like days. Jake paced in their quarters while his crew tried to make sense of what had happened. Dr. Foster was buried in her tablet, researching everything they knew about galactic species. "Captain," Tom Brady called from the communication station they had set up. "I'm picking up a lot of chatter from around the station. The translation software can't keep up with all the different languages, but the computer is detecting words like predator, dangerous, and savage in multiple conversations." "Great," Jake muttered. "Word is spreading." Lisa sat quietly in the corner, still wearing her chef's apron. She had barely spoken since the aliens left. "I don't understand," she said finally. "It was just breakfast. How could breakfast make them so afraid?" Dr. Foster looked up from her research. "I think I'm starting to understand. Lisa, when you cracked that egg, what did the aliens see? An egg being cracked? No. They saw you destroying what they consider to be an unborn child. When you cooked bacon, they saw you consuming the flesh of a murdered creature. When you added milk to the eggs, they saw you mixing the life essence of a mother with the remains of her offspring." The room went quiet. Jake felt sick to his stomach, and it had nothing to do with the strange station food they had eaten for lunch. "But that's not what it was," Lisa protested. "The eggs weren't fertilized. The chickens live good lives. We take care of them." "That doesn't matter," said Dr. Foster. "To them, we're monsters who breed creatures specifically to kill and eat them. From their perspective, we're running death camps for food." Pete Anderson, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "So what are we supposed to eat? Plants only? Humans need protein to survive. We need vitamins that come from animal products." "I know," said Dr. Foster, "but they don't understand that. Or maybe they do understand it, and that's what scares them." A soft chime indicated someone was at their door. Jake opened it to find Veltari standing alone in the corridor. She looked tired, and her blue skin seemed paler than before. "May I come in?" she asked. "Of course." Jake stepped aside. "Are you here officially?" "No. This is personal." She looked around at the assembled crew. "I wanted to speak with you before the council meets tonight." "To prepare us for bad news?" asked Jake. "To help you understand what you're facing." Veltari moved to the center of the room. "Captain Martinez, has anyone explained to you why the galaxy reacted so strongly to your food demonstration? Dr. Foster thinks it's because you're all vegetarians. That is part of it, but not the whole truth." Veltari was quiet for a moment. "Millions of years ago, this galaxy was a very different place. There were many species, and yes, some of them were carnivores like humans." Dr. Foster leaned forward. "What happened to them?" "They were destroyed. All of them. In the most devastating war the galaxy has ever seen." The room fell silent. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "The carnivorous species," Veltari continued, "believed they had the right to hunt and consume other intelligent beings. They saw herbivorous species as nothing more than food sources. The war lasted for thousands of years and nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy." "But we don't eat intelligent beings," protested Lisa. "We eat animals, non-sentient creatures." "The distinction is not as clear to us as it is to you," said Veltari. Most galactic species evolved from what you would call prey animals, creatures that survived by hiding, by running, by being peaceful. The idea of deliberately killing any creature for food it awakens very old fears. Jake was beginning to understand. So when they see us eating meat, they see the return of the predators, the species that once hunted their ancestors through the stars. Dr. Foster was taking notes rapidly. Veltari, are there any carnivorous species left in the galaxy? Few. Very few. And they are strictly monitored by the Council. They are required to consume only synthetic proteins or specially grown non-sentient matter. The consumption of any creature that once lived is absolutely forbidden. Even insects? Asked Pete. Veltari shuddered. Especially insects. Many of our member species evolved from insect-like creatures. Jake sat down heavily. So we're what? The boogeyman? The monsters from their nightmares? In many ways, yes. But there is hope, Captain Martinez. The Ashanti people were once carnivorous, millions of years ago. We evolved beyond the need to consume other creatures. If we can prove to the Council that humanity has the potential to do the same... But we can't just stop eating meat, said Dr. Morgan. Human biology requires certain nutrients that are difficult to get from plants alone. Our brains, our muscles, our entire physiology evolved with omnivorous nutrition. I understand, said Veltari. But you must understand the Council's perspective. They see a species from a death world that casually consumes the flesh and offspring of other creatures. A species that breeds animals specifically for slaughter. A species that drinks the milk meant for infant creatures. Lisa made a small sound of distress. When you put it like that, it sounds horrible, Jake finished. But it's not horrible to us. It's just life. And that, said Veltari, is what terrifies them most, that such things are just life to you. It suggests a fundamental difference in how you view other living beings. Tom Brady spoke up from his station. Ma'am, what exactly is the Council planning to do about us? Veltari hesitated. Commander Zekthor is recommending immediate termination of contact. He believes humans are too dangerous to allow into the galaxy. Dangerous? Jake stood up. We haven't threatened anyone. We've been nothing but polite and respectful. But you have shown that you are willing to kill and consume other living beings without apparent moral concern. To many Council members, that makes you extremely dangerous. Dr. Foster looked up from her notes. What would it take to change their minds? I don't know, Veltari admitted. This is unprecedented. No carnivorous species has ever applied for Council membership. Most were destroyed before they developed space travel. The weight of that statement settled over the room. Jake realized they weren't just trying to join an alien club. They were fighting for humanity's survival in a galaxy that saw them as monsters. Veltari, he said carefully, what happens if the Council decides we're too dangerous? She met his eyes, and he saw the answer there before she spoke. Then humanity will be forbidden from leaving your solar system, forever. And if you try... She didn't need to finish the sentence. Jake understood. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations would make sure that the monsters from Earth never threatened anyone again. The Council meets in 4 hours, Veltari said, as she moved toward the door. Use that time wisely. Find a way to show them that humans are more than just predators. After she left, the crew sat in stunned silence. Finally, Jake spoke. All right, people. We have 4 hours to save humanity. Ideas? The stars looked different from this far out. Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the massive alien space station grow larger on the main screen. 3 years of travel had brought them here, to the edge of known space, where humanity would meet the Galactic Council for the first time. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the station," said Lieutenant Tom Brady from the communications station. His hands moved quickly over the controls as strange sounds filled the bridge. It's not in any human language." Jake nodded. They had expected this. The translation software was still learning alien languages, and it would take time to understand each other properly. "Put it through the translator and do your best." A mechanical voice came through the speakers, speaking slowly and carefully. "Human vessel Liberty, you are cleared to dock at Bay 7. Follow the guidance beacons. Welcome to Kepler Station." "Thank you, Kepler Station," Jake replied. "We're honored to be here." The Liberty moved slowly toward the station. Jake had seen pictures, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. The station was huge, easily 10 times larger than any human structure. Strange ships of different shapes and sizes moved around it like insects around a flower. Some were long and thin, others round like bubbles, and a few looked like they were made of crystal. "Sir," called out Navigator Lisa Walker from her station, "I'm seeing at least 12 different ship designs. The computer can't identify any of them." "That's because they're all alien," said Dr. Amy Foster, the ship's science officer. She was studying her tablet, full of notes about what they might encounter. "According to our briefings, the Galactic Council has over 40 member species. We're about to meet creatures that evolved on completely different worlds." Jake felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries. First contact with alien civilizations, the chance to join a community of worlds and learn from species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years. But it also meant proving that humans deserved a place among them. "Docking complete, Captain," announced Engineer Carlos Rivera. "All systems green. The station is providing atmosphere and gravity." "Good work, everyone." Jake turned to address his crew. "Remember, we're representing all of humanity here. These aliens have agreed to consider us for membership in their council. But we have to prove we're ready. Be polite, be careful, and try not to touch anything unless they say it's okay." The crew of 12 had been chosen carefully. Each person was an expert in their field and had trained for years for this moment. Besides Jake, Amy, Lisa, Tom, and Carlos, there was Marine Sergeant Danny Cooper for security, Chef Pete Anderson for food preparation, Dr. Kate Morgan for medical issues, Engineer Ben Taylor as backup, Communications Officer Sam Wilson, supply, Officer Jim Brown, and Technician Mike Davis. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. On the other side stood 3 beings that definitely were not human. The first was tall and covered in what looked like gray scales. It had 4 arms and large, yellow eyes. The second creature was shorter and seemed to be made of living crystal that sparkled in the light. The third looked almost human except for blue skin and no hair. The tall-scaled being stepped forward and spoke. The translator worked better now, that they were closer. "Greetings, humans. I am Commander Zekthor of the Kethvar warrior caste. This is Science Leader Kulzen of the Geltai, and Diplomat Veltari of the Ashanti people." Jake stepped forward and tried not to stare. "Commander Zekthor, I'm Captain Jake Martinez of the United Earthship Liberty. Thank you for welcoming us to your station." "You come from what your people call Earth," said Veltari, the blue-skinned alien. Her voice was soft and musical. "We have heard much about your world. It is unusual. Unusual how? Asked Dr. Foster. The three aliens looked at each other. Commander Zekthor spoke first. Your planet is what we call a death world. Very few species could survive there. High gravity, dangerous weather, and many predatory life forms. Most worlds in the galaxy are much more peaceful. Earth made you strong, added Kulzen, the crystal being. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. But also different from other species. Jake wasn't sure if that was good or bad. We hope our differences can be helpful to the Council. That remains to be seen, said Commander Zekthor. His forearms crossed in what might have been the alien version of folding arms. The Council has rules. Species must prove they are civilized before they can join. Your people have a history of violence. We've learned from our mistakes, Jake said quickly. Humans have had peace on Earth for over 50 years. We've worked together to build a better world. Words are easy, said Zekthor. The Council requires proof. You will stay on this station for one standard galactic month. We will observe your behavior and learn about your culture. If you prove suitable, the Council will vote on your membership. Veltari stepped closer. Do not worry too much, Captain. Martinez. Many species have joined the Council successfully, but you must understand some Council members are nervous about Deathworld species. They fear you might be too aggressive. We're not aggressive, said Sergeant Cooper. We're just prepared to defend ourselves if needed. Commander Zekthor's large eyes focused on Cooper. You are a warrior, a Marine. I protect the crew and the ship. Interesting. The Kethvar are also warriors, but we fight only when absolutely necessary. Violence should always be the last choice. Dr. Foster spoke up. Commander, what exactly does the Council want to know about us? Everything, said Kulzen. How you live, what you eat, how you solve problems, how you treat other species. The Council has learned that a species' true nature shows in small things, not just big speeches. We're happy to share our culture, said Jake. We've brought examples of human art, music, and food. Our chef, Pete Anderson, would be honored to prepare a meal for anyone interested. The three aliens looked at each other again. There was something in their expressions that Jake couldn't read. Food, said Veltari slowly. Yes, that would be educational. Food tells much about a species. Tomorrow. Then, said Commander Zekthor, we will arrange for a cultural exchange session. You will prepare food and we will observe. Other Council representatives will attend. That sounds perfect, said Jake. As the aliens left, Jake felt good about the meeting. It had gone well, and the aliens seemed reasonable. Tomorrow's food. Demonstration would be a great way to show human culture. He had no idea that breakfast was about to become humanity's biggest challenge in the galaxy. The emergency council session was already underway when Jake and his crew arrived at the Great Chamber. The room was enormous, with seating for hundreds of different alien species. Most of the seats were filled, and the noise of dozens of different languages being translated created a constant buzzing sound. Commander Zekthor stood at the center of the chamber, his forearms gesturing as he spoke to the assembled delegates. His voice carried clearly through the translation system. Witnessed the most disturbing display of savagery in Council history. These creatures from the death world consume the flesh of other beings as casually as we consume fruit. They drink the milk meant for infants. They crack open the shells of unborn offspring and devour the contents. A wave of disturbed sounds rippled through the chamber. Jake saw aliens covering their eyes, others making gestures that might have been prayers or protective signs. Furthermore, Zekthor continued, they do not merely hunt wild creatures, they deliberately breed living beings for the sole purpose of killing and consuming them. They have turned murder into agriculture. Jake started to stand, but Veltari, who was sitting with the Ashanti delegation, caught his eye and shook her head slightly. Not yet. A delegate from one of the crystalline species stood up. Commander Zekthor, you have shown us recordings of this breakfast demonstration, but surely there must be some explanation. Perhaps we misunderstood their actions. There is no misunderstanding, Zekthor replied firmly. I questioned them directly. When asked if they consume the flesh of other creatures, they confirmed it proudly. When I expressed shock that they drink maternal milk, they showed no shame. These beings see nothing wrong with their predatory behavior. Another alien stood up, this one looking like a large butterfly with gossamer wings. What of their intelligence, their technology? Surely these indicate some level of civilization. Intelligence does not equal civilization, answered a delegate from the aquatic species. The ancient predators were also intelligent. They used their intelligence to become more efficient killers. Dr. Foster leaned over to whisper to Jake. This is getting worse by the minute. They're not even considering our perspective. On the chamber floor, Kulzen, the crystal being, was now speaking. I have analyzed the food substances they prepared. The protein structures confirm that they were indeed from living creatures. The calcium ratios in the milk indicate it was produced by a lactating mammal. There can be no doubt about their dietary habits. A small, furry delegate called out, what of their intentions toward council species? If they consume other creatures so readily, what prevents them from seeing us as potential food sources? Jake couldn't stay quiet any longer. He stood up, and his movement caught the attention of the chamber. The buzzing of conversations died down as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward him. Honored delegates, Jake said, his voice carrying through the translation system. May I respond to these accusations? There was a moment of silence before Zekthor spoke. The human captain requests to address the council. Do we allow predators to speak in this chamber? I am not a predator, Jake said firmly. I am the representative of a species that wants only peaceful contact with the galaxy. Yet you consume other living beings, called out one of the tree-like delegates. We consume non-intelligent animals, Jake clarified. Creatures that lack consciousness or the ability to suffer as we understand it. This statement caused an uproar. Aliens throughout the chamber began making sounds of distress and anger. The butterfly delegate's wings were fluttering rapidly, which Jake guessed was a sign of agitation. You determine which creatures are worthy of life and which are not, asked the aquatic delegate. How convenient for predators to declare their prey unintelligent. Dr. Foster stood up beside Jake. That's not what we do. We have extensive studies on animal consciousness and intelligence. We don't eat any creature that shows signs of higher cognitive function. And who decides what constitutes higher cognitive function? Challenged Kulzen. The predators themselves? Sergeant Cooper, who had been growing more agitated as the session continued, finally stood up. We're not monsters, he said loudly. Humans have worked for centuries to reduce animal suffering. We have laws protecting endangered species. We care for our food animals better than many species care for their own offspring. The chamber exploded in angry sounds. Several delegates were now standing and shouting in their native languages. The translation system was overwhelmed, creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. "Order!" called a voice from the chamber's center. An alien Jake hadn't seen before had taken the speaker's position. It was tall and thin, with smooth, silver skin that seemed to shift and flow. "I am Arbitrator Koltek. As neutral party, I will maintain order in this chamber." The noise died down gradually. Arbitrator Koltek turned toward the human delegation. "Captain Martinez, you claim your species is not predatory, yet the evidence suggests otherwise. Please explain how creatures that consume flesh and offspring can be considered peaceful." Jake took a deep breath. "Arbitrator, humans are omnivores. We evolved to eat both plants and animals because our homeworld required it for survival. But evolution doesn't define who we are now. We've developed ethics, laws, and moral systems that govern our behavior. Yet you still consume flesh," pointed out Zekthor. "We consume the flesh of non-intelligent animals, yes. But we would never harm an intelligent being. The idea horrifies us as much as it horrifies you." "How can we believe this?" asked the butterfly delegate. "You have shown that you are capable of killing living creatures for food. What prevents you from killing us?" Ben Taylor stood up. "Because you're intelligent. You can think, you can feel, you can communicate. The animals we eat can't do any of those things, at least not at the level that would make them persons." "Persons?" The aquatic delegate's voice was sharp. "You divide living beings into persons and non-persons? How do you decide who deserves protection and who deserves death?" Lisa Walker finally found her voice. "It's not about deserving death. It's about the natural order. On our world, some creatures eat plants, some eat other creatures, and some eat both. We're part of that cycle." "Natural order," repeated Cool Zen. "The ancient predators also claimed their killing was natural." Jake could see they were losing ground with every word. The aliens weren't interested in understanding human perspective. They had already decided that humans were monsters. "What would you have us do?" Jake asked desperately. "Change our entire biology? Stop eating the foods that have sustained us for millions of years?" "Yes," said Zekthor simply. "If you wish to join civilized society, you must abandon your predatory nature completely." "That's impossible," protested Dr. Morgan. "Human metabolism requires nutrients that are difficult to obtain from plant sources alone. Our children need proteins and fats that come primarily from animal products. You're asking us to malnourish our species. Then perhaps," said Arbitrator Kolthek quietly, "your species is not compatible with galactic civilization." The chamber fell silent. Jake felt the weight of those words settling over him like a burial shroud. Around the room, alien delegates were nodding in agreement. "The vote will be held tomorrow," announced Kolthek. "All delegates will consider whether humanity should be permitted to join the Galactic Council or whether they should be classified as a dangerous predatory species and restricted to their home system." As the session ended and aliens began filing out, Jake caught Veltari's eye. She looked sad, almost apologetic, but she also looked like someone attending a funeral. Jake realized it might be humanity's funeral she was attending. "Captain," whispered Tom Brady, "some of the smaller species are requesting immediate protection from us. Station security is already being briefed on predator containment protocols." Jake looked around at his crew. They had come to the stars hoping to find friends and allies. Instead, they had found a galaxy that saw them as the monsters from its worst nightmares. And the worst part was, Jake was starting to wonder if maybe the galaxy was right. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. The artificial day and night cycle of the station felt wrong, and his mind kept racing through the disaster of the council session. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the alien delegates filled with fear and disgust. A soft chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Veltari standing in the corridor, but she wasn't alone. With her was an elderly alien Jake hadn't seen before, small and wrinkled with large, sad eyes. "Captain Martinez," Veltari said quietly. "This is Elder Morden of the Keepers. He maintains the historical records of the galaxy. I thought you should hear the full story before tomorrow's vote." Jake let them in. The rest of his crew was scattered around the common area, none of them able to sleep either. Dr. Foster looked up from her research tablet as the aliens entered. "Elder Morden," Veltari said, "these are the humans. Captain Martinez, Dr. Foster, and the others." The elderly alien moved slowly to the center of the room. When he spoke, his voice was tired, like someone who had seen too much over too many years. "I am old," he began, "even by galactic standards. I have lived for over 800 of your Earth years. I was there when the last of the carnivore wars ended. I remember what the galaxy was like before the peace." Dr. Foster set down her tablet. "Elder Morden, can you tell us about these wars? We need to understand what we're facing." The old alien settled into a chair that adjusted itself to his small frame. The galaxy was young then, full of species that had just discovered space travel. Like yours, many had evolved from predators. They saw the stars as hunting grounds and other species as prey. "But surely not all carnivorous species were evil," protested Lisa. "Evil is a simple word for a complex situation," said Elder Morden. "They were not evil in their own minds. They were simply following their nature. The strong consumed the weak. To them, this was the natural order." Jake leaned forward. "What changed?" "The Devourers," said Elder Morden, and Veltari made a gesture that might have been a protective sign. "They were the worst of the carnivorous species. They had evolved beyond needing to hunt for survival. They had technology to create any food they required. But they continued to hunt and consume other intelligent beings because they enjoyed it." The room fell silent. Even the background hum of the station seemed to quiet. "They would raid peaceful worlds," Elder Morden continued. "Not for resources or territory, but for what they called the harvest. They would take the youngest and healthiest of a species and consume them in elaborate ceremonies. They believed that eating intelligence made them more intelligent." Dr. Foster made a sound of disgust. "That's horrible." "It was," agreed the elder, "but it was also effective. The Devourers became incredibly advanced, using the knowledge they gained from consumed species to improve their technology. Other carnivorous species began copying their methods." "What happened to them?" asked Jake. "The Great Alliance was formed," said Veltari. "Every herbivorous and peaceful species in the galaxy joined together. It took 3,000 years. But eventually, we won." "Won how?" asked Ben Taylor. Elder Morden's large eyes grew sad. "By becoming like them. We learned to make weapons, to fight, to kill. We committed genocide on a galactic scale. Every carnivorous species was hunted down and destroyed. Billions of beings died. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. But some must have survived," said Dr. Foster. "Veltari mentioned that there are still a few carnivorous species in the galaxy." "A handful," said Elder Morden. species that proved they could change, that could abandon their predatory nature completely. They undergo constant monitoring and must consume only synthetic proteins. Any sign of reverting to natural feeding habits results in immediate extinction. Jake felt sick. And now you see us as potentially being like the Devourers. Can you blame us? Asked Veltari softly. You come from a death world, just as they did. You consume flesh casually, just as they did. You breed creatures for slaughter, just as they did. But we're not like them, protested Lisa. We don't eat intelligent beings. We have morals, ethics, laws against cruelty. Elder Morden studied her carefully. Child, the Devourers also had morals and ethics. They simply didn't apply them to species they considered inferior. That's different, said Dr. Morgan. We don't consider other species inferior. We consider them equals. Yet you eat animals that you claim are not your equals, pointed out Veltari. How is that different? The question hung in the air. Jake tried to think of an answer that would make sense to these beings who had lived through galactic war and genocide. Because, he said slowly, there's a difference between intelligence levels. A cow isn't capable of philosophy or art or building spaceships. It can't communicate complex ideas or feel emotions the way we do. The Devourers said the same about us, said Elder Morden quietly. They claimed we were too primitive, too emotional, too weak to be considered truly intelligent. Dr. Foster leaned back in her chair. So, in your view, any species that eats other living beings is potentially dangerous. Not potentially, said Veltari. Definitely. The capacity to kill and consume other life forms indicates a fundamental willingness to see other beings as resources rather than individuals. But humans have changed, Jake insisted. We've developed beyond simple survival. We have compassion. We protect endangered species. We've eliminated cruelty from our food production systems. Have you? Asked Elder Morden. Dr. Foster, what percentage of animals on your world are raised specifically for human consumption? Dr. Foster checked her tablet. Roughly 60% of all mammal biomass excluding humans. And these animals live natural lives before being consumed? Well, no. They're raised on farms in controlled conditions. In cages? Some of them, yes, but we've improved conditions significantly over the past century. Elder Morden nodded, slowly. So you have industrialized the breeding and slaughter of other species. You have turned the creation and destruction of life into a systematic process. When he put it that way, Jake realized how it must sound to species that considered all life sacred. Elder, said Tom Brady, what would it take for the council to accept us? What would we need to prove? That you can change, said Elder Morden simply. That you can evolve beyond your predatory nature just as the surviving carnivorous species did. And if we can't, or won't? The old alien's expression was infinitely sad. Then the galaxy will do what it must to protect itself. The same thing it did to all the other predatory species. Extinction, whispered Jake. It is not done out of hatred, said Veltari quickly. It is done out of necessity. The galaxy learned that predatory species cannot be trusted to remain peaceful. Their nature always reasserts itself eventually. Dr. Foster looked up from her tablet. What about the species that did survive? How did they prove they had changed? They abandoned meat consumption completely, said Elder Morden. They destroyed all records of their predatory past. They submitted to genetic modification to remove aggressive tendencies. They became, in essence, different species entirely. "You're asking us to stop being human," said Jake. "We are asking you to become something better than human," replied Elder Morden, "just as we had to become something better than what we were." As the two aliens prepared to leave, Veltari turned back to Jake. "Captain, there is one more thing you should know. Tomorrow's vote is not just about council membership. If the vote goes against you, the council will invoke the Predator Protocol, which is immediate quarantine of your species. Your solar system will be surrounded by automated defense platforms. Any human ship that attempts to leave will be destroyed without warning. After they left, Jake's crew sat in stunned silence. Finally, Dr. Foster spoke. "They're not wrong, you know. From their perspective, we really do look like monsters." "So what do we do?" asked Lisa. Jake looked around at his crew, at the people who represented all of humanity. Tomorrow, aliens would vote on whether his species deserved to survive in a galaxy that had already decided what happened to predators. "We find a way to show them that humans are worth saving," he said, "because if we don't, this might be the last conversation any human ever has outside our solar system." Jake was awakened by alarms blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the translation system was broadcasting emergency messages in dozens of languages. He grabbed his uniform and rushed to the common area where his crew was already gathering. "What's happening?" he called to Tom Brady, who was monitoring their communications equipment. "Some kind of space storm," Tom replied, his face tense. "Massive energy disturbance approaching the station. The aliens are calling it a stellar cascade event." Dr. Foster was looking at readings on her tablet. "I'm seeing electromagnetic pulses, gravity fluctuations, and what looks like quantum instability. This is beyond anything we've encountered before." The door chimed, and Veltari entered quickly, her usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious worry. "Captain Martinez, the station is in grave danger. The cascade will hit us in approximately 6 hours. We are evacuating all non-essential personnel." "What can we do to help?" Jake asked immediately. Veltari looked surprised. "Help? You are scheduled for evacuation with the other visitors." "We're not leaving," said Jake firmly. "If the station is in danger, we want to help save it." "Captain, you don't understand. This storm could destroy everything. Even if you survive, your presence during an emergency could be seen as what? Humans abandoning people in crisis? No." Jake turned to his crew. "Anyone who wants to evacuate can go, but I'm staying to help." One by one, his crew members stepped forward. "We're with you, Captain," said Sergeant Cooper. The others nodded agreement. Veltari stared at them. "Why would you risk your lives for a station full of people who fear you?" "Because it's the right thing to do," said Lisa simply. Over the next hour, Jake's crew spread throughout the station, working alongside alien engineering teams. The space storm was unlike anything in Earth's experience, but many of the basic principles were similar to solar flares and electromagnetic disturbances. Carlos Rivera found himself working with a team of crystalline engineers in the power core. The aliens were struggling with energy regulation as the approaching storm caused wild fluctuations in the station's systems. "The crystal matrix can't handle these power spikes," one of the alien engineers said through the translator. "We need to reroute power, but our safety protocols don't allow us to work with this level of energy." Carlos studied the readings. On Earth, he had worked with experimental fusion reactors during solar storm events. "What if we temporarily isolate the affected sections and route power through backup conduits? That would require someone to manually adjust the couplings while the system is active. It's too dangerous." "How dangerous?" potentially fatal levels of radiation and electrical discharge. Carlos was already putting on a radiation suit from the station's emergency supplies. On Earth, we call that Tuesday. The alien engineers watched in amazement as Carlos entered the active power core and began rerouting energy conduits with his bare hands. The radiation levels would have killed most galactic species instantly, but Carlos worked steadily for 3 hours, redirecting power flows and stabilizing the core. Meanwhile, Dr. Morgan was in the medical bay, helping treat aliens who had been injured during the initial storm effects. The station's medical staff was overwhelmed, and many procedures required more hands than the aliens possessed. "This patient needs surgery immediately," said the head medical officer, a creature that looked like a walking tree with delicate branches for fingers. "But the procedure requires 6 limbs working simultaneously. We don't have enough personnel." Dr. Morgan examined the patient, one of the aquatic beings whose water suit had been damaged. "I can assist. Tell me what you need." For the next 2 hours, Dr. Morgan worked alongside alien doctors, her human dexterity and endurance proving invaluable. She held equipment steady during delicate procedures, maintained pressure on wounds while doctors worked, and helped coordinate care for multiple patients simultaneously. "How do you maintain such precision for so long?" asked one of the doctors. "Most species would be exhausted by now." "Humans evolved to work for extended periods," Dr. Morgan explained while suturing a wound. "Our persistence hunting background means we can maintain focus and physical activity longer than most creatures." Ben Taylor was working with the station's structural engineering teams, trying to reinforce critical sections before the storm hit. The aliens were amazed by his ability to work in the dangerous, zero-gravity sections of the station's outer hull. "Fee. Support struts need to be welded," explained the chief structural engineer. "But the work must be done outside the station during severe electromagnetic interference. Our magnetic positioning systems won't function." Ben was already checking the EVA suit systems. "No problem. Humans are good at working in hostile environments. But how will you maintain position without magnetic anchors?" Ben smiled. "The same way humans have always done dangerous work, very carefully." For 4 hours, Ben worked in the void outside the station, welding support struts and reinforcing hull sections, while electromagnetic energy from the approaching storm created a light show around him. His human spatial awareness and problem-solving abilities allowed him to work effectively even when most technological assistance failed. Inside the station, Lisa and Pete had taken over the emergency food preparation for the thousands of beings working around the clock. They quickly learned which species could eat which types of emergency rations and organized an efficient distribution system. "We need to feed 12,000 beings with completely different nutritional requirements," Lisa said, studying the complex dietary charts the station had provided. "And we need to do it with limited supplies during an emergency." "Good thing humans are adaptable," said Pete, already organizing cooking teams from various species. "Let's show them how Earth handles disaster relief." By the time the storm hit, Jake's crew had integrated completely into the station's emergency response. They worked 18-hour shifts without complaint, sustained only by energy bars and coffee. The aliens began to notice that while they were rotating shifts to prevent exhaustion, the humans just kept working. "How are they maintaining this pace?" asked Commander Zekthor, who was coordinating the defense efforts. He had been watching Sergeant Cooper lead security teams through dangerous sections of the station for 12 straight hours. "Deathworld physiology," said Veltari, who had been observing the humans carefully. "They're built for endurance in hostile conditions. When the storm finally hit, It was worse than anyone had expected. Power systems failed, hull sections buckled, and several areas lost life support entirely. But the humans kept working. Carlos spent 6 hours in a radiation-flooded power core, manually maintaining fusion stability while the automated systems were offline. Dr. Morgan performed surgery by emergency lighting when the medical bay's power failed. Ben welded critical hull breaches from outside the station while electromagnetic pulses interfered with all navigation systems. Jake coordinated rescue efforts when communication systems failed, using his crew's endurance and adaptability to maintain contact between different sections of the station. When the main computer systems went down, Tom Brady rigged a communication network using basic radio principles and spare parts. The storm lasted 14 hours. When it finally passed, the station was badly damaged but intact. Most importantly, there had been no casualties. The alien crews were exhausted, many needing medical attention from the stress and overwork. The humans were tired, but still functional. "Incredible," said Commander Zekthor as he found Jake in the command center. "Your people worked continuously for 20 hours. How is this possible?" "Humans are persistence hunters," explained Jake. "We evolved to chase prey across vast distances for days at a time. Extended physical and mental exertion is what we're built for. And you did this to help people who consider you monsters?" Jake looked around at the damaged but surviving station, at the thousands of alien lives that had been saved. "Commander, this is what humans do. When people are in danger, we help. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien, friend or enemy. It's who we are." Commander Zekthor was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He bowed, a gesture of respect that Jake had never seen from the proud warrior. "I have misjudged your species," Zekthor said formally. "What I witnessed today was not the behavior of predators. It was the behavior of protectors." As word spread through the station about the humans' actions during the crisis, Jake began to notice a change in how the aliens looked at his crew. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Respect. "Captain," said Veltari as she approached. "Jake in the command center, the council vote has been postponed. After what happened today, many delegates want to reconsider their positions." "And what position are you taking?" Jake asked. Veltari smiled, the first genuinely warm expression he had seen from her. "That perhaps the galaxy has been wrong about predators. Perhaps the capacity for violence, when properly directed, can be a force for protection rather than destruction." Jake looked out at the stars, visible again now that the storm had passed. For the first time since arriving at the station, he felt hope. Maybe humans could find their place in the galaxy after all. 3 days after the storm, Jake was surprised to receive a request for another food demonstration. This time it came directly from Commander Zekthor and included a personal note. "The Kethvar warrior caste wishes to understand the source of human endurance." The gathering was smaller this time, but more focused. Besides Zekthor and his warriors, there were several species that had worked alongside humans during the crisis. Dr. Foster had suggested they approach the demonstration differently, focusing on the science behind human nutrition rather than just the food itself. "Honored friends," Jake began, addressing the assembled aliens, "we understand that our previous demonstration caused distress. Today, we hope to help you understand not just what humans eat, but why we evolved to eat it." Lisa stood beside a table of ingredients, but this time she had prepared detailed charts showing nutritional breakdowns and evolutionary history. The story of human food begins millions of years ago on our world, Earth. Dr. Foster activated a holographic display showing Earth's landscape. Our planet is what you call a death world because it cycles between ice ages and warm periods. During the ice ages, plant food becomes scarce. The species that survived were those that could eat anything available, including other creatures, said Commander Zekthor, but his tone was curious rather than accusatory. Yes, said Lisa, but not by choice, by necessity. During ice ages that lasted tens of thousands of years, humans would have gone extinct if they couldn't digest animal proteins. She picked up an egg, and this time the aliens didn't recoil. This egg contains proteins that helped our ancestors survive when no plants could grow. The amino acids in this single egg can sustain a human for an entire day during starvation conditions. But your world is not in an ice age now, observed Kulzen. Why do you continue to consume animal products? Dr. Foster brought up a new display, showing human biology. Because our brains evolved to be very large and complex. The human brain uses 20% of our total energy even when we're resting. This brain requires specific nutrients to function properly. What nutrients? Asked one of the Kethvar warriors. Omega-3 fatty acids for neural development, vitamin B12 for cognitive function, complete amino acid profiles for neurotransmitter production, iron for oxygen transport to the brain. These nutrients are difficult to obtain from plants alone, especially in the quantities our brains require. Lisa opened a container of what looked like synthetic meat. We've brought some examples of how humans are adapting our diet. This is laboratory-grown protein that has the same nutritional profile as animal meat, but no creature died to produce it. The aliens leaned forward with interest. You can create flesh without killing? Asked Veltari. We're learning to, said Pete Anderson. We take a few cells from an animal, grow them in a laboratory, and create muscle tissue without the animal feeling any pain or distress. This is fascinating, said Commander Zekthor. You are evolving beyond the need to kill for survival. Slowly, admitted Jake. But yes, humans are trying to keep our nutritional requirements while reducing harm to other creatures. Dr. Foster brought up another display. But there's something else we want you to understand. Our evolution as omnivores didn't just shape what we eat. It shaped who we are. How so? Asked Elder Morden, who had been listening quietly. Persistence hunting requires cooperation, explained Dr. Foster. Humans had to work together to track and capture prey animals that were faster and stronger than we were. This cooperation extended to sharing food, caring for the injured, and protecting the weak. Lisa nodded. In human culture, food is about more than nutrition. When we share food, we're showing trust and friendship. When we cook for someone, we're showing care and affection. And during crises, added Jake, humans instinctively share whatever food they have. It's one of our strongest social bonds. Commander Zekthor looked thoughtful. During the storm, I observed human behaviors that puzzled me. Your people shared their emergency rations with alien species, even though you had limited supplies. Because that's what humans do, said Lisa simply. We take care of each other. But we noticed something else, said Veltari. Your people worked longer and harder than any other species during the crisis. Even when offered rest, you continued working. Dr. Foster smiled. That's also part of our evolutionary heritage. Persistence hunting meant humans could work at moderate intensity for hours or even days. We're literally built for endurance. Your predatory nature made you better helpers? Asked Kulzen, sounding puzzled. Our hunting nature required cooperation, planning, tool use, and extreme endurance, explained Jake. Those same traits make us good at solving problems, working in teams, and persisting through difficulties. Pete Anderson had been preparing food during the discussion, but this time, it was different. I want to show you something, he said, holding up a piece of bread. This is made from wheat, which humans have been growing for 10,000 years. He broke the bread and offered pieces to the aliens. Several of them accepted cautiously. Humans didn't just hunt animals, Pete continued. We also learned to partner with plants. We planted seeds, cared for crops, and bred plants to be more nutritious. We turned wild grasses into wheat, wild fruits into apples, wild vegetables into carrots. You domesticated plants as well as animals? Asked one of the tree-like beings. We formed partnerships, corrected Lisa. The plants get care, protection, and help spreading their seeds. We get food. Both species benefit. And with animals? Asked Veltari. The same principle, said Dr. Foster. Modern farm animals are very different from their wild ancestors. Chickens lay eggs almost every day instead of just during breeding season. Cows produce far more milk than their calves need. We bred them to overproduce in exchange for protection, food, and medical care. A symbiotic relationship, said Kulzen thoughtfully. Exactly, said Jake. Not predation, partnership. Commander Zekthor stood and walked closer to the food display. May I taste this bread? Pete smiled and handed him a fresh piece. Zekthor bit into it carefully, chewed thoughtfully, and nodded. It is pleasant. And you say this grain grows because of human care? The wheat we use today couldn't survive in the wild, explained Lisa. It depends on humans to plant it, tend it, and harvest it. In return, it feeds us. What about the animals? Asked Elder Morden. Dr. Foster pulled up images of modern farms. Dairy cows live longer, healthier lives than wild cattle. Chickens are protected from predators and disease. Even animals raised for meat live in better conditions than they would in nature. But they still die, pointed out Veltari. Yes, admitted Jake. Some do, but quickly and painlessly, and their lives, while shorter than we might prefer, are comfortable and safe. And increasingly we're finding alternatives, added Lisa. Laboratory-grown meat, plant-based proteins, synthetic animal products. Humans are working to reduce animal deaths while maintaining our nutritional needs. Commander Zekthor was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. The Kethvar are warriors, but we fight only to protect others. We have always believed that violence is justified only when it serves a greater good. He looked directly at Jake. During the storm, I saw humans risk their lives to protect aliens they had never met. I saw them work beyond exhaustion to save people who had called them monsters. This suggests that human predatory nature serves the same purpose as Kethvar warrior nature. Which is, asked Jake, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Veltari stepped forward. Captain Martinez, I believe the Council needs to reconsider not just humanity's application for membership, but our entire understanding of predatory species. What do you mean? Perhaps the problem was never that some species evolved as predators. Perhaps the problem was that the ancient carnivorous species forgot the purpose of strength. They used their abilities to dominate rather than protect. Elder Morden nodded slowly. An interesting perspective. The Devourers were not dangerous because they were predators. They were dangerous because they were selfish predators. Humans appear to be selfless predators, added Commander Zekthor. Your strength serves others rather than just yourselves. As the demonstration ended, Jake felt a fundamental shift in the room's atmosphere. The aliens were no longer afraid of humans. They were intrigued by them. Commander Zekthor, Jake said, would the Kethvar be interested in a cultural exchange program? We could learn from your warrior traditions, and perhaps we could share our endurance training methods. The four-armed alien's eyes lit up. The Kethvar would be honored to train alongside Deathworld warriors. As the aliens filed out, Veltari lingered behind. Captain, the council vote is tomorrow, but I think you should know that the vote is no longer about whether to accept humans into the galaxy. What's it about then? She smiled. It's about how quickly we can integrate you. The galaxy needs protectors, Captain Martinez, and I believe humans might be exactly what we've been waiting for. The final council session was unlike anything Jake had expected. The great chamber was packed with delegates from across the galaxy, and for the first time since arriving at the station, Jake heard the sound of excited conversation rather than fearful whispers. Arbitrator Koltek called for order, his silver skin shifting in the chamber's lights. Honored delegates, we gather today to vote on the human application for galactic citizenship. However, recent events have prompted additional considerations. Jake and his crew sat in the designated area, no longer isolated but surrounded by alien delegates who nodded respectfully as they passed. Commander Zekthor had even arranged for several Kethvar warriors to sit with them as a gesture of support. Before we begin, announced Kolthek, Elder Morden of the Keepers has requested to address the chamber regarding historical context. The elderly alien moved slowly to the speaking platform. His voice carried clearly through the translation system. Honored colleagues, for millions of years, this galaxy has operated under a simple principle. Predatory species are too dangerous to coexist with peaceful civilizations. This belief was born from trauma, forged in the fires of the carnivore, wars, and reinforced by the memory of the Devourers. He paused, letting his words settle over the chamber. But recent events have forced me to reconsider our fundamental assumptions. The humans have shown us something we thought impossible: a predatory species that uses its strength to protect rather than dominate. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Several delegates were nodding. I propose, Elder Morden continued, that we have been asking the wrong question. The question is not whether predatory species can be trusted. The question is whether this particular predatory species has evolved beyond the selfishness that made their predecessors dangerous. Commander Zekthor stood and requested permission to speak. Honored delegates, I initially opposed human membership based on their dietary habits. I have since learned that I was judging them by their consumption rather than their actions. He gestured toward Jake's crew. During the recent crisis, these humans worked 20 hours straight to save our station and our lives. They shared their limited food supplies with species they had never met. They risked radiation poisoning, spatial exposure, and exhaustion to protect aliens who had called them monsters. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of emphasis. This is not the behavior of predators seeking prey. This is the behavior of guardians protecting their charges. Veltari rose from the Ashanti delegation. The humans have also shown us something else important. They are actively working to evolve beyond their biological requirements. They are developing synthetic alternatives to animal products and reducing harm to other species while maintaining their nutritional needs. She activated a holographic display showing human agricultural development. They have transformed from hunters into farmers, from killers into cultivators. They have learned to partner with other species rather than simply consuming them. Dr. Foster had been given permission to present human scientific data. She stood and addressed the chamber. Honored delegates, human evolution was shaped by necessity, not choice. Our death world required adaptability and endurance for survival. These traits, which you initially saw as threatening, are the same traits that make us effective helpers during crises. Her presentation showed comparative data from the storm response. Humans worked an average of 18 hours during the crisis, compared to 8 hours for most other species. Our stress response systems allowed us to maintain cognitive function. Under extreme pressure, our social cooperation instincts made us share resources even when supplies were limited. Kulzen, the crystal being, spoke from the scientific delegation. I have analyzed the human response patterns during the emergency. Their behavior consistently prioritized collective survival over individual comfort. This is the opposite of the predatory selfishness we have learned to fear. The aquatic delegate who had fainted during the first food demonstration now spoke through his water suit's communication system. I wish to formally apologize to the human delegation. My initial reaction was based on fear rather than understanding. Having worked alongside Dr. Morgan during the medical crisis, I can attest to their healing nature. One by one, delegates who had worked with humans during the storm stood to share their experiences. The tree-like beings spoke of human cooperation. The butterfly-winged species described human problem-solving abilities. Even the small, furry species that had fled from the first breakfast demonstration now praised human protective instincts. Finally, Arbitrator Kolthek called for formal presentations. The motion before us is no longer simply about human membership. The Cultural Committee has prepared a new classification for consideration. A new alien Jake hadn't seen before took the speaking platform. I am cultural analyst Zempora. After extensive review, we propose creating a new category of galactic citizenship. Benevolent apex species. She activated a display showing the proposed classification. This category recognizes species with predatory evolutionary backgrounds, who have successfully channeled their abilities toward protection and cooperation rather than domination and consumption. What would this classification mean for humans? Asked Jake when given permission to speak. Full galactic citizenship, replied Zempora, with certain dietary restrictions on mixed species stations and a commitment to continued evolution toward synthetic alternatives. In exchange, humans would serve as crisis responders and protectors for peaceful species during emergencies. Commander Zekthor stood again. The Kethvar warrior caste formally requests a military exchange program with humanity. We wish to learn human endurance techniques and crisis management strategies. The Ashanti Diplomatic Corps, added Veltari, requests human participation in our peacekeeping missions. Your combination of physical capability and protective instincts would be invaluable. Elder Morden spoke once more. I am old enough to remember when the galaxy lived in fear of predators. But perhaps it is time to stop fearing strength and start appreciating those who use strength to protect others. The vote, when it came, was overwhelmingly in favor. 347 species voted to accept the new classification. Only 12 abstained, and remarkably, none voted against. As the session ended, Jake found himself surrounded by alien delegates wanting to meet the humans personally. Species that had avoided them just days ago were now requesting cultural exchanges, joint research projects, and cooperation agreements. Captain Martinez, said Commander Zekthor as the crowd began to thin, The HFY have prepared quarters for your crew on our homeworld. We would be honored to host the first human-alien military exchange. And the Ashanti Council has approved the first human diplomatic attaché position, added Veltari. We believe Dr. Foster would be an excellent candidate. Lisa Walker was approached by several food scientists interested in learning about human nutrition and agriculture. We've never had an opportunity to study omnivorous dietary systems, explained one of the researchers. Your techniques for plant and animal partnerships could revolutionize galactic food production. But the most surprising offer came from the station's administration. Captain Martinez, said Station Administrator Pelketh, we would like to offer you and your crew permanent positions here on Kepler Station. As the first humans in galactic space, you would serve as cultural ambassadors and emergency response coordinators. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing excitement and hope in their faces for the first time since arriving at the station. What about Earth? He asked. What about the rest of humanity? The full integration process will take years, explained Arbitrator Koltek. Your world will need to prepare for contact with galactic civilization. But the door is now open. Humanity has a place among the stars. That evening, Jake stood in the observation deck watching ships from dozens of different species moving around the station. Tomorrow, some of those ships would carry his crew members to new worlds for cultural exchanges. Others would carry alien delegates to Earth to begin the integration process. Lisa had already started planning the first multi-species restaurant, working with alien chefs to create fusion cuisine that respected everyone's dietary requirements. Dr. Foster was preparing for her diplomatic assignment with the Ashanti. Commander Zekthor had invited Sergeant Cooper to train with HFY warriors on their homeworld. It's not what we expected, said Veltari as she joined Jake at the observation window. No, Jake agreed. It's better. We came here hoping to prove we weren't monsters. Instead, we discovered that being predators might actually be our greatest gift to the galaxy. How so? Jake watched a damaged ship being escorted to safety by station security. Someone has to be willing to run toward danger when others run away. Someone has to be strong enough to protect those who can't protect themselves. For millions of years, the galaxy has been peaceful because it eliminated all the warriors. But what happens when that peace is threatened by something from outside the galaxy? Veltari considered this. You think the galaxy needs protectors. I think the galaxy has been missing something important. Sheep are wonderful creatures, but they need sheepdogs to protect them from wolves. And humans are the sheepdogs? Jake smiled, watching another human crew member helping repair a damaged alien vest.